Hello. They say marriage is tested in sickness and in health. Turns out, mine didn't survive the sickness part. But don't worry, I made sure she felt just as sick as I did by the time I was done. Some men get cheated on and fall apart. Some scream, cry, beg, or drown themselves in whiskey. Me? I conducted an experiment. The subject? My dear, devoted wife, Claire. The hypothesis? If I pretended to be terminally ill, she would expose her true loyalty. Spoiler alert, she failed. Miserably. I used to think I had a solid marriage. You know, the kind, comfortable, predictable, the type where you finish each other's sentences and never have to question who has your back. Claire and I had been married for 8 years, together for 11. She was beautiful, social, the kind of person who could walk into a room and instantly charm everyone, while I was the more grounded one, analytical, structured, the kind of guy who reads contracts before signing anything, just in case. I should have known better than to take our marriage at face value. Looking back, the signs were there. It started with small changes, little things that wouldn't raise alarms unless you were paying attention. She began staring at her phone a little too long, smiling at messages she never shared. She started dressing up more often, putting extra effort into her looks, even for mundane grocery runs. Then came the disappearing acts. Claire had always been a homebody. She loved lazy Sunday mornings, binge-watching bad reality shows, ordering takeout instead of cooking. But suddenly, she was always busy. Work dinners, gym sessions, new girl trips that came out of nowhere. I didn't question it at first because I trusted her. Trust. What a funny, naive little thing. One night, I came home earlier than expected from a business trip. She wasn't expecting me. There was a half-empty bottle of wine on the counter, 2 glasses, and a faint scent of expensive cologne lingering in the air, a scent I didn't own. She walked out of the bedroom in a silk robe, the kind she never bothered to wear for me anymore. When she saw me, she hesitated just a second too long. Then she smiled, walked up to me, and kissed me like nothing was wrong. That was the moment I knew. But knowing wasn't enough. I didn't want to be one of those guys who just found out and walked away like a wounded animal. I needed proof. I needed to be sure. And more than that, I needed her to show me who she really was. I let a few weeks pass, watching her from a distance, observing her behavior, her lies, her routines. I noticed her work meetings got more frequent. Her gym bag sat in the trunk of her car untouched for days despite her going to work out at odd hours. One day, I checked our phone bill. There it was. A repeated number, dozens of texts, hours of calls, sometimes in the middle of the night when she thought I was asleep. I could have confronted her then. Could have demanded answers, watched her lie to my face, gaslight me into thinking I was crazy. But I didn't want to give her that satisfaction. Instead, I planned my own betrayal. It started small. I began faking symptoms. Subtle things, fatigue, loss of appetite, forgetting little things here and there. At first, she didn't notice. She was too busy being busy elsewhere. But when I let her catch me Googling rare diseases, leaving medical pamphlets on my desk, and looking shaken after doctor's visits, she started paying attention. "Are you feeling okay?" she asked one evening. I nodded, forcing a small, tired smile. Just stressed. That was the first test. A wife who truly loved her husband would have pushed for answers. Demanded I see a doctor. "Claire?" She just nodded and went back to texting. Strike one. A week later, I escalated the act. I started losing weight. Nothing drastic, just enough that my clothes started looking a little loose. I made sure to skip meals when she was around, let my hand tremble slightly when reaching for a glass. She started watching me, but not the way a loving wife should. No, this was different. She wasn't worried. She was calculating. The way she distanced herself, the way her touches became less frequent, less affectionate, told me everything I needed to know. If she really loved me, she would be terrified at the idea of losing me. She would have held me closer, taken care of me. Instead, she started disappearing even more. The late nights increased. The random hotel charges appeared on our bank statements. She became less patient with me, less interested in what I had to say. It was like she had already checked out. Strike two. Then came the final test. I sat her down one evening, looking as broken and vulnerable as I could. I told her my doctor wanted to run more tests, that it might be something serious. I expected her to at least fake concern, to play the role of the supportive wife she had always pretended to be. Instead, she barely met my eyes, nodded stiffly, and said she had a work dinner that night. I watched her grab her purse, fix her hair, and walk out the door without a second glance. And that's when I knew. She had failed. She wasn't staying with me because she loved me. She was staying because she thought she had time. Time to figure out how to leave me. Time to move her affair into something permanent. Time to take what she could before I was too weak to stop her. She didn't realize that her time had just run out. Because while she was out, I was planning her downfall. And when I was done, she was going to wish I had really been dying. There's something fascinating about watching someone fall into their own trap. Claire had no idea that every move she made, every excuse she gave, was proving my theory right. I had set the bait, and she took it, hook, line, and sinker. But I wasn't done yet. After the night she barely reacted to my serious health concerns, I knew I had her true colors on full display. She wasn't concerned. She wasn't even pretending anymore. It was almost as if my potential illness was an inconvenience to her, a delay in her escape plan. But I needed to be sure. I needed to know exactly how deep her betrayal ran. So, I went further. I started tracking her movements. Not in an obvious way. I wasn't some amateur stalker. No, I was smarter than that. Claire, like many people, relied on routines. She had a set pattern, a schedule she stuck to, and that made my job so much easier. She left the house at 7:30 a.m. every morning for work. Her job was exactly 25 minutes away. But on some mornings, she took an extra 40 minutes to get there. Dieter. After work, she normally came home by 6:15 p.m. But recently, some nights, she wasn't home until nearly 9. More Dieters. Her favorite excuse? Just a long day at the office, babe. I smiled and nodded, pretending to be too weak, too tired, too distracted to question it. Then, I checked our bank statements. Claire wasn't the type to pay attention to small transactions. She thought I was too preoccupied with my condition to check our finances. She was wrong. A few well-placed searches, and I found hotel charges. Same location. Same pattern. Some weekday nights, always late check-ins. Not business-related. Not innocent. I could have confronted her right there. Could have printed out the receipts, slammed them on the table, and demanded answers. But what's the fun in that? Claire was cozy in her little fantasy world, thinking she was outsmarting me. Thinking she had me wrapped around her finger, too blind and too trusting to notice. I wanted to let her sink deeper. I wanted to see how far she would go. Next, I started listening. Claire loved talking on the phone in low, hushed whispers. She never used to. But now? She'd take her calls in another room, in the bathroom, in the car with the engine running. I wasn't an idiot. One night, she was on a call in the guest bedroom. Door cracked open just enough. I heard her say, "I miss you. I wish I could see you tonight." Pause. A soft laugh. "Soon. I promise." I walked past the door, made just enough noise so she'd know I was there. The call ended within seconds. She came out a minute later, smiling, casual as ever. "Hey, babe. Want me to make you some tea?" Tea. Like I was some sick, fragile little thing. I smiled. Said, "That would be nice." I made sure my hand shook slightly when I reached for the cup. Let her believe I was getting worse. Let her believe she was getting away with it. Then, I decided to test her further. One afternoon, I casually mentioned that my doctor was suggesting I take a leave from work, that I should focus on my health. Her reaction? Panic. Not the right kind of panic. Not the panic of a loving wife worried about her husband. No. She was panicking because if I was home more, I might see too much. She gave a weak, fake smile. "That's a big decision. Are you sure? Maybe you should wait a bit." Wait? Wait for what? Oh, right. Wait for her to finish lining up her escape plan. She didn't want a sick husband. She wanted a clean break. And I wasn't going to give her one. The more I watched her, the more I realized Claire wasn't just cheating. She was calculating her exit. She was distancing herself in little ways. I tested it. One night, I reached for her hand while we watched TV. She used to squeeze it, play with my fingers, lean into me. Now, she didn't even react. She wasn't present anymore. I could have been a stranger sitting next to her. That was the moment I stopped feeling sad. That was the moment I stopped feeling like a victim. Now, I was the scientist, and she was the test subject, and she had failed. Miserably. But I still wasn't done. Because an experiment is only complete when you have undeniable, irrefutable proof. So I set my final trap. And when I was done, Claire would never see it coming. A good experiment doesn't just reveal the truth, it leaves no room for doubt. Claire had failed every test I set up, but now, I needed something solid. Something that would destroy any chance of her spinning a lie. And so, I built the perfect trap. I started by planting a seed. Over dinner one evening, I mentioned that my condition was worsening, that my specialist was considering a more aggressive treatment plan, something that would require out-of-town hospital visits, overnight stays. I watched her closely as I spoke. Her reaction? Pure calculation. She hesitated, then forced a sympathetic frown. That sounds serious. How long would you be gone? Not, are you okay? Not, what does the doctor think? Not, I'll be there for you. No. She wanted logistics. She wanted to know when I'd be out of the house. I shrugged, feigning exhaustion. A few nights at a time. Maybe a week, depending on how the tests go. She nodded slowly, stirring her food in thoughtful silence. Then she smiled her fake, first I'm a good wife smile. Whatever you need, babe. There it was. The green light. She was already making plans. She thought she'd have free rein. She had no idea I'd be watching. The night before my supposed hospital stay, I packed a small bag, just enough to make it look believable. A change of clothes, toiletries, a book I never intended to read. Then, at 6 a.m. sharp, I left for treatment. Except I didn't go to any hospital. Instead, I drove to a hotel 5 blocks away. A place with a perfect view of my own house. A place where I had already set up a hidden camera feed. Because while Claire thought she had an empty house, I had filled it with eyes. The first half of the day, nothing happened. She worked from home, made a cup of coffee, went about her routine. I watched her through my phone, the live security feed feeding me every move she made. Then, around noon, she made a call. I couldn't hear the conversation, but her body language told me everything. The way she twirled her hair, bit her lip, glanced toward the door like a nervous teenager. Then, she started cleaning. And not just any cleaning. She cleaned with purpose. She lit candles. She put on music. She changed into something she used to wear for me. This wasn't normal. This was preparation. And then, at 7:12 p.m., he arrived. I recognized him immediately. Tall. Athletic. The kind of guy who probably spent more time at the gym than at work. The guy she had risked everything for. They kissed the moment the door closed. No hesitation. No guilt. Just excitement. I sat in my hotel room, watching, completely detached. Because in that moment, Claire wasn't my wife anymore. She was just a woman who had made the worst mistake of her life. I let them enjoy their stolen evening. Let them have their glasses of wine, their whispered conversations, their night of passion in the very house I built. Because by morning, everything would change. While they were asleep, wrapped in the comfort of their secret, I was already setting the final stage. I had copies of the footage. I had screenshots of their texts extracted from her cloud. I had bank statements showing her little rendezvous. But more importantly, I had power. Because Claire thought she had time. She thought she was in control. But when she woke up the next morning, she would realize something horrifying. She wasn't leaving me. I was leaving her. And I was taking everything with me. Revenge isn't about anger. It's not about throwing dishes, screaming, or letting emotions take over. No, true revenge is about control. It's about watching the person who wronged you walk straight into their own downfall, thinking they're untouchable until it's too late. And Claire? She had no idea what was coming. I didn't storm into the house that night. Didn't drag her and her lover out and make a scene. That would have been too easy. Instead, I let them sleep peacefully, wrapped up in their little fantasy, completely unaware that their world was already caving in. Because while they were sleeping soundly, I was putting the final touches on my grand performance. By morning, Claire would wake up in the same house, in the same bed, next to the same man she had betrayed me with. But everything else? It would be different. At exactly 6 a.m., while Claire and her guest were still asleep, I sent out a carefully crafted email. Subject, a personal update, the truth about Claire. Recipients, everyone. Her family, her coworkers, our mutual friends, even her boss. Inside? The evidence. Screenshots of her texts. The hotel receipts. The high-definition security footage of her welcoming her guest into my home, into our bed. And the best part? A personal message from me. I kept it short and sweet. I wanted to personally let you all know that Claire and I are separating due to her ongoing affair. She didn't know I had been seriously ill, and rather than support me, she decided to spend her time elsewhere. I won't hold her back any longer. She's free to be with the man she truly loves. I wish them both all the best. It was the perfect trap. Because now, there was no denying it. No gaslighting. No fake tears. No, you're being paranoid, babe. Only facts. Only proof. Only consequences. Claire loved the comfortable life we built together. She loved the house, the luxury, the security. But here's what she never realized. Everything was in my name. The house, mine. The car she drove, mine. Our bank accounts, carefully controlled. She was living a lifestyle she thought she was entitled to. But legally, she had no claim to it. While she was sleeping off her night of betrayal, I locked her out of everything. Credit cards? Canceled. Joint accounts? Frozen. Insurance? Revoked. By the time she reached for her morning coffee, she would find out that her debit card wouldn't even buy a muffin. I had one last surprise. Before I left the house, I made a few adjustments. I packed all of Claire's belongings, clothes, shoes, personal items, into neatly labeled boxes and stacked them on the front porch. A little parting gift for her new life. Then, I changed the locks. Because by the time she woke up, this wouldn't be her home anymore. At 7:45 a.m., I sat in my car across the street, sipping a fresh coffee, waiting for the moment she realized. The first sign? The door rattling. Claire, standing in her robe, fumbling with the handle, confused, trying to open the locked door. Then, the frantic knocking. Then, the phone calls. I ignored them all. Her lover, still inside, peered through the window, confused. He didn't know it yet, but his life had just taken a drastic turn as well. Because I had sent a special copy of the email to his wife. That's right. He was married, too. And something told me that by now, his wife was reading my email with great interest. Claire finally gave up on calling me and tried calling her parents. I watched her face go pale, because they already knew. Her mother, a woman who always bragged about her perfect daughter, had blocked her number. Her father, a proud businessman, had cut her off completely. She had no home, no money, no backup plan. And as I watched her stand on the porch, surrounded by her own packed-up life, reality finally sank in. She wasn't the brilliant mastermind. She wasn't the one in control. She was just another cheater who got caught. By noon, Claire had finally stopped calling. By evening, her boss had fired her for the workplace scandal. By the next morning, her lover's wife had thrown him out, too. And me? I took a vacation. First-class ticket, sunny beaches, no worries. I didn't need to fight, didn't need to yell, didn't need to beg for answers. Because Claire gave me everything I needed. She showed me exactly who she was. And I made sure the whole world saw it, too. Some betrayals are unforgettable, and some revenge plans are legendary. This was both. Revenge wasn't a single moment. It wasn't just the locked door, the public exposure, or the financial devastation. No, real revenge is what comes after. It's watching someone navigate the ruins of the life they thought they had, realizing there's no way out. And Claire? She was trapped. I didn't need to see her reaction firsthand. I had already won. But human nature is a funny thing. I still checked my phone, still let my curiosity take over, still enjoyed watching the aftershocks of her downfall. By day 2, Claire had resorted to frantic damage control. She tried calling friends, but half of them had already distanced themselves. Turns out, people love a scandal until they realize siding with you makes them look bad. She texted me dozens of times, but I never answered. The messages started off angry, then defensive, then desperate. You had no right to do this, turned into you didn't have to ruin my life. That one made me laugh. I didn't ruin her life. She did. I just made sure she couldn't hide it. By day 3, she had finally reached the last stage, regret. She tried to play the remorseful wife, apologizing, begging, offering any excuse that might make me listen. It was just a mistake. I never meant to hurt you. A mistake? A mistake is spilling coffee. A mistake is taking the wrong exit. She consciously chose to lie, sneak around, and destroy everything we had. And now, she had nothing. Her job? Gone. Her reputation? Burned. Her parents? Embarrassed beyond belief. Even the guy she risked everything for? Well, he was dealing with his own personal collapse. Nathan, the man she thought was her future, was now her biggest problem. His wife didn't just leave him. She took everything. The house. Hers. The bank accounts. Frozen while she pushed for maximum compensation. She even hired a private investigator after my email. Turns out, Claire wasn't the first. Nathan had been cheating for years, juggling multiple women, playing them all. Claire was just the latest, and now, she was just another burned-out affair. So what did he do? He panicked. Nathan showed up at Claire's motel, furious, demanding to know why she didn't warn him, like she had known I was going to drop a nuclear bomb on their lives. She tried to reason with him, tried to convince him they could get through this. But there was no them anymore. Nathan wasn't looking for love. He was looking for an easy escape. And Claire? She was no longer convenient. So he did what men like him always do. He cut his losses and left. And just like that, Claire went from cheating wife to abandoned mistress, stuck in a cheap motel room with no job, no money, and no one left to manipulate. And me? I was free. A week after I walked away from her forever, Claire tried to see me one last time. She showed up at my office, looking like a woman who had lost everything. Dark circles under her eyes, hair in a mess, wearing clothes she clearly hadn't changed in days. Security almost didn't let her in. She wanted to talk, to explain, to beg. I could have let her. Could have let her stand there, plead her case, try to convince me that somehow, some way, we could fix this. Instead, I simply looked at her, gave her one last smirk, and said the words that ended it all. I have nothing left to say to you. And then I turned my back on her. Because Claire wasn't my problem anymore. She was just a cautionary tale. It took less than a month for my life to become better without her. I got the house. Got every penny. Didn't lose a single friend. Didn't have to explain myself. Didn't have to fight for my reputation. Claire? The last I heard, she was living out of a friend's guest room, desperately searching for a job that didn't require a glowing recommendation. She was untouchable in the worst way possible. And the most ironic part? She never even saw it coming. Some people think revenge is about destruction. But really, it's about exposure. Because when you let someone reveal who they truly are, they end up destroying themselves. I didn't need to ruin Claire's life. She did that all on her own. I just made sure she had an audience. Bye-bye.